So tonight we're looking at something known as protecting, sometimes referred to as bidding in the protective seat, or protective bidding, basically all the same thing really. In America they call this balancing, or bidding in the balanced seat, or balancing, all basically the same term for the same idea. So the general idea of protecting, the reason it's called protecting I will explain in a minute, but the general idea of protecting is when it applies when if you were to pass, the bidding would then end. So what that means is it's gone bid from an opponent, pass. So you are about to be, if you were to pass, you would be the third pass in a row, and therefore the bidding would end. Okay? So it has to be a bid by an opponent, because if it's a bid by your partner, you can only ever be the second pass. You can't ever be the third. So it has to be opponent, pass, and then you are known as in the protective seat, or the balancing seat, if you feel like being American. So the idea behind the protective seat is that you have just been given a big amount of information. And the big amount of information is the pass from the partner of the bidder. So when they open, in this instance, one heart, and it goes pass, what this hand has said is quite a lot of things. They're not interested in game because they didn't bid. Their hand is quite bad, actually. They haven't got 6 points. They can't muster up a bid. And they're quite happy to play in a part score. So you've been given information about the opponent's hands. In that, they haven't looked for game. This can come about in all sorts of different scenarios. This is the most kind of clear-cut protective situation. So what I want us to do is have a little think about what's going on in the hand, rather than looking at our 13 cards, which is hard to ignore your own hand. Let's think about what's going on around the table. So if we were to say they'd had, as an opening hand, they've got an average of, let's say 15, maybe? That's probably fair, isn't it? They might have as bad as 11, 12. They might have as good as 18, 19. So an average is probably somewhere 14, 15-ish. So if we think they've got, say, 15 points, I'm just kind of sort of ballpark guessing. I accept that that's not exact. We don't know what our partner's got other than they didn't have a bid. So we know they've not got a really good hand that doubled or a really good hand that was making overcall, something like that. So we're a bit unsure about here. So we'll come back to that in a second. What do we think about South? How many points do they have as a maximum?
5.
5 is, yeah, they've got less than 6, right? So they've got 5 as a maximum. So an average of, an average of 5 would be overstating their hand, wouldn't it? An average is probably something like 3 or 4, something like that. So, even if we're extremely generous and say they have 5, which is the most they could have, what that says, again, I appreciate that as a guess, they might have 0, they might have 19, we don't really know. But what that says is the points are roughly 20-20. What you tend to find in this scenario, when it goes one heart or one anything, pass, what you tend to find is that the points are either equal or slightly in your favour. Not the other way very often. It's only possible when they have more points than you. If this hand has a really good hand, like 16, 17, 18 upwards, and they happen to have 4 or 5 to make them go over 20 as a team, you tend to find that when this bidding occurs, you actually have as many points, if not more, than them, on average. So, giving in, because the instinct would be to pass with that hand, wouldn't it? It's not good enough. You haven't got a 5-card suit, you haven't got enough points to double. What are you going to bid? There is no bid, is there? If we're being strict with ourselves. So if we were to pass, the strong likelihood is that they will make 1 heart. A, because it's quite easy to make 7 tricks with the trump suit. It's not that hard with a trump suit. No trump is different, of course. And B, they've chosen their trump suit rather than ours. So if the points are equal, he who has trumps tends to win. That's kind of a fairly obvious thing to say. So they're A, in a 1-level contract, which is not attractive for us to defend because it's hard to beat a 1-level contract. And B, they have their suit as trumps currently. So passing doesn't look attractive because they're going to make their contract, basically. So we have got a problem because we don't want to pass, yet we don't have a bid that isn't a lie. Right? And this is where the protective seat, the idea of bidding in the protective seat, comes in. And it gets the name protecting is because you are protecting against your partner having a fairly decent hand, but they couldn't bid. There are all sorts of hands that your partner could have that couldn't bid over 1 heart. They might not have enough points to double, but they might have 9, 10 points. They might have a 5-card suit, but they might have a decent hand. They might have been just about to open 1 spade themselves and now can't bid because of this bid has stopped them from doing anything. You'll have had that happen to you all the time, I'm sure. You're about to do X and then they bid in front of you, and you go, whoa, I can't do that now because that means something else. Now I'm the overcaller, I must have 5 of them, blah, blah, blah. So this is known as the direct seat, bidding directly over the opponent. To make a bid in the direct seat, you must be a full shilling. You are not messing about in that seat. If you bid 1 spade, it's a proper bid. 5 cards in spades, good quality, blah, blah, blah. So this hand will frequently be passing on a hand that isn't terrible, especially when they pass. This is the key bid here. When they have passed, we now know the points are roughly equal, so our partner must have something. They must have. Either that, or we've been extremely lied to by the opponents. They forgot to bid with their 18 points or whatever, which is obviously impossible, but you know what I mean. So when our partner passes, that doesn't mean their hand is awful. It's just they didn't have an appropriate bid. They might have a 1-no trump opener that now can't bid because they need more points to bid 1-no trump as an overcaller, yada yada. So what you do, you might have heard this phrase before, in the protective seat, you do what's known as borrow a king. So that means you sort of squint and look at your hand through fuzzy lens, and you pretend you have a king more than you actually have. Now it's important that you don't choose a specific king. So you don't think, oh, I would like to have the king of diamonds, so I'll pretend I have the king of diamonds. Woo, now I've got a good 5-card suit. Okay? So you just generally add 3 points onto your total without saying specifically, I have this king or that king, etc. So in that scenario, if we have 13 points rather than the 10 we actually have, what do you think the correct bid is after the opponents have opened 1 heart? What would be a good bid, would you say?
Double, no trump.
Double, 1-no trump, or 1 spade. They're all the possibilities, aren't they? Or pass, I suppose, but I don't want to pass. The problem with 1 spade is that you would need 5 spades, because you're an overcaller, whether you like it or not. The problem with 1-no trump is you would like more points as an overcaller to bid 1-no trump. To overcall 1-no trump, you need more points, because they have more points. So the correct bid, shockingly, the correct bid I'm arriving at is double, my favourite bid. So if we just think about what that's doing to the bidding, I'm going to rub off the 15 and 5 now, because we don't actually know that to be true, that was just a bit of a guess. What we're now doing is, A, we're keeping the bidding alive, because that is not a pass, so now the bidding continues until we get 3 passes. So that's a good thing. We've achieved what we wanted, which is we're not letting them play 1 heart. And kind of part 2 to that is that we're likely to be able to compete against their 1 heart bid. Our partner is now going to do something, aren't they? Hopefully they bid spades or diamonds. I'm not particularly keen on them bidding clubs, but I'm not, outraged if they bid clubs because they might have clubs. But what we're going to do is either pinch the contract by playing it ourselves, or we're going to push them up. Those are one of the 2 options. What you tend to find, based on human psychology, you tend to find that people don't like being pinched from, so they tend to go 1 more. This is just the general feeling of what we as humans do. So if we were to double, they pass, and let's say our partner did 1 spade, you'd probably find that one of these 2 would end up going to 2 hearts. Just based on what people do. Doesn't mean it's the wrong thing to do, it's just kind of human psychology. So that is a win as far as we're concerned, because we have pushed them from 1 heart to 2 hearts. So we've pushed them up. That is a win-win. It's a win, not lose. Either they make 2 hearts, in which case we didn't lose anything, or we defeat them in 2 hearts, in which case we've gained by pushing them. You see? Alternatively, we play in our contract, and instead we play in spades, diamonds, or clubs, and now they don't have hearts as trumps, so that's a win, because we're choosing our suit as trumps, not theirs. And when the points are close to 20-20, we want trumps, ideally, because then we have the edge. That means we make more tricks than them, hopefully. So the idea behind a protective bid, really, is you just sort of blur the lines a little bit between what you would normally need for a bid. You stretch. You go a little bit out of the comfort zone. Some of you will be very comfortable with that because you'll be bidders, and some of you will be uncomfortable with that because you like to be regimented with your rules. So it depends on your kind of personality. You'd be shocked to learn I like this kind of bidding, where you're just pushing the envelope of what's really allowed. But in protective seat, it is a good idea because of this bid right here. This is really key that they have passed, because their hand must be bad, which means your partner's hand can't be bad. And it's about the maths.
Does partner assume that you have got your open?
So partner has to take into account the fact that you have bid in protective seat. So it's a very good question, because looking at this, you would be responding to a double. You would immediately go to, because you're used to it, opening hand, shortest in hearts, blah, blah, blah. Because your partner has stretched for a bid. They might have come up with something here, might they? You shouldn't be punishing them for bidding in the protective seat. So you have to take that into account. Now what a lot of players will do is sort of think, well, they've borrowed a king. They've kind of stretched by roughly a king's worth of points. So I will downgrade my hand by a king to balance the books, so to speak. Because they've kind of pinched a bit of points. They've taken a bit of a liberty by bidding. I will be more resolute. Because if you're both borrowing kings, you'll tend to find you end up owing money, if you know what I mean. You don't have enough points between you.
Because I'm guessing if they're being honest about the double anyway, they'll just add that.
They'll add it on anyway, so yeah, exactly that. So this bid here, you'll tend to find, by the way, shockingly, that double is the most used bid in a protective scenario because it's so flexible. So in this scenario, what you're really doing is just keeping the bidding alive. You're not letting them play in one heart, which is almost always going to be bad for your side. The only time letting them play in one heart is good is if you guys have lots of hearts, which is pretty unlikely, isn't it, given that they've bid hearts. It doesn't happen very often. So double is the most useful bid. Now these protective scenarios can come up in all different kind of iterations, if you like. But this is the most classic one. One banana, pass, pass, do something. I want to point out this is one of a suit. It's acceptable to let them play in one no trump because one no trump is hard. One of a suit is not typically difficult. One no trump is typically difficult. So it's okay to let them play in one no trump. You wouldn't usually protect against one no trump because the likelihood of them making it is severely diminished because they don't have trumps. Whereas when they play in one of a suit, they're probably making that 90+% of the time. So just do something. Keep the bidding alive. Now something else you might do, if a double didn't apply because you didn't have tolerance, you must be able to tolerate anything your partner can bid. So if I was to change this hand, but make something else a bit dodgy about our hand, if you like. So let's make it, put the king, queen in there. So the exact same bidding, one heart, pass, pass. So the problem with double now is what? What's partner likely to bid? Yeah, clubs, right. So if we double and partner bids 2 clubs, we're in a mess. We're in a mess because we've got
Why would you not leave them in hearts then?
You could, that is one consideration. So you could pass one heart and think, I actually don't mind defending hearts, so I'm going to leave you in it. You only ever leave them in a low-level trump contract when you actively want to defend, or you simply have no bid because your hand is that bad. So in this scenario, leaving them in hearts isn't unreasonable. However, don't forget, they've got the hearts, so their hearts are sat on top of yours. So your king-queen is actually probably only worth 1 trick in trumps. Probably. So I wouldn't be particularly keen on leaving them in one heart because, again, one of a suit is kind of easy. Not always, but kind of. So I will be interested in bidding simply because what I think is going to happen if I bid is they're going to end up in 2 hearts and then I'll defend. Right? It's almost like a bit of a bluff. You bid on the assumption they're going to end up going up anyway.
You're going to bid spades,
I'm going to bid spades.
Yeah.
Now, am I thrilled about bidding spades? Well, yes, because I like spades, but no, not really, because the spades are very poor. And if this was in the direct seat, so if this hand was over here, and it was 1 heart our bid, I would not bid 1 spade, because that is a direct bid. To bid in the direct seat, you must have a proper bid. Whereas 1 heart pass pass, we've now learned this hand is weak. We've got to do something, I think. I think we've got to do something, and I think we've got to blur the lines, and the lines we're blurring here is good quality. We do not have a good quality suit, but we do have 5. It's very important you don't start bidding 4-card suits, because the ideology behind overcalling is you are basing it on suit length. So it's okay to have a bad 5-card suit when protecting. It's not okay to have a bad 4-card suit. If you only have 4-card suits, you need to be doubling most of the time, or bidding 1 no trump, which I'll talk about in a second. That's another alternative. So in this scenario, I would bid 1 spade, and kind of bid 1 spade and go, I don't really like I've done that, but I've done it now. And then what will happen, not always, but most of the time, is they'll end up going up, or our partner will support our spades, and they will have the good spades. They might have, ace, queen, X of spades or something, and they bail us out. Or maybe they've got 3 small spades, and we wish we'd never bid. But most of the time, you will either push them up, or end up pinching it in your suit. That's the idea. So it's, again, a general balancing thing. Now, one more thing I just kind of very hastily mentioned was bidding 1 no trump. Now, protectively bidding 1 no trump is essentially the same thing as bidding 1 no trump in the direct seat, but you need fewer points because you're borrowing a king. So if you were to bid one no trump directly over one heart, that would be about 15 to 18 points, roughly. Balance hand, heart stopper, etc. If it goes one heart pass pass, bidding one no trump here is effectively the same bid, but you are 3 points lighter because you've come up with something. So in this scenario, one no trump after two passes in the protective seat is a bit like a one no trump opener. Basically what I'm saying, the general point is what I'm saying is, if it goes one of a suit pass pass, do something. That something will almost always be double. If it's not double, you can bid a bad suit if you got one. You know, you think, I don't really like the suit, but I'll bid it. Or you can bid one no trump if your hand is balanced with some points, with a smattering of points. Remember, when you're bidding opposite a protective bidder, you've got to take into account the fact that they have stretched. Because they have come up with something, haven't they, to keep the bidding alive. Okay, so remember that, and don't go too mental, unless your hand actually is good and you just didn't have a bid, of course. Okay, so far I've only really dealt with one of a suit, pass, pass. Protecting bidding can come up in a different scenario where actually both opponents bid and it's still a good idea to protect. So let me just change the bidding slightly. I'll now make it that we are... I'll keep us as west because that makes it easy. Okay, so this is where I'll probably get a feel for those in the room of how hyper-aggressive you are. But I'm going to say, after South opens one diamond, I'm going to say with this west hand we pass and we don't bid one spade. I personally don't think that suit is a good quality suit. I hope you agree with me. Especially not vulnerable. So I think pass is the correct course of action here. Now it goes two diamonds from north. Our partner passes and South passes. So what do we know about the north-south hands? So first thing we know is they have a diamond fit. They have 8 cards or more in diamonds. The second thing we know is that between them they have at least 18 points, at least 12 here, at least 6 here, you would imagine. More often than not, they will have 20 odd, 21, 22, that kind of region. However, neither north nor south has looked for game. So it's unlikely, / impossible, they have 25 points. Because one of them would have done something more. This hand would have been 3 diamonds, or this hand would have carried on looking if they had a good hand. Again, the pass from them, they're now saying, I'm willing to play in 2 diamonds. They have just expressed to us what their hand is, and it's not good enough to go for game. Do you follow me? So we're reading into their bidding. So the maximum they have between the two of them is 24, because with 25 we would have expected them to look for game somewhere. And the minimum they have is about 18. So we're in that bracket again, 18 to 24. We have got something like 22, 21, 20, 19, 18, that kind of region of points where it's close to half and half. You see? So this is another protective scenario because I don't know about you guys, but I don't really want to defend 2 diamonds. But double does not work. What's wrong with double?
Lack of heart.
Lack of hearts, right. So double should be the first thing you think of. Double is so super flexible, as you know, one of my favourite bids, just do something, partner. The reason I like it as a bid is because it puts the emphasis on your partner to do something. It gets you out of the hot seat, if you like. But double doesn't work because if partner bids hearts, we're not keen. If they bid like they've only got 4 cards in hearts, say, we're not particularly happy with hearts. So I think I would now bid the spades as a protective bidder, not a direct bidder. This is a really important difference and inference. 1 diamond, we are in the direct seat. I don't want to bid 1 spade because our spades are bad. 2 diamonds pass, we are now in the protective seat. See the difference?
Yes, you're basically saying you've got 5, but because you've done it the second time round, you've got low quality 5.
Correct. So our partner can now draw an inference from our refusal to bid on the first round. We didn't bid 1 spade, and now suddenly we've bid spades. One of 2 things has happened here. We've either found a spade in our hand that we didn't know we had, because we've sorted it wrong, or we've decided it's worth bidding 2 spades, now we know that they're not going for game. And again, the general principle is, because the points are roughly 20-20, we know our partner must have something. Right? They have to have something, otherwise the opponents have dramatically underbid if our partner has nothing. So we are trusting them to a certain degree, but opponents tend to do things that are good for them. They tend to. Not only that, this one is actually slightly more attractive to bid because we know that they have a fit. We know they have a diamond fit, and when the opponents have a fit, you guys have a fit. 99% of the time, when they have an 8-card fit in a suit, you also have an 8-card fit in a suit. It's not guaranteed to be spades, but it's very likely to be spades. It could be clubs if our partner's got 5 clubs and 2 spades, say, but it's likely to be spades based on our hand. So that's the best course of action. Again, because double doesn't really work. Yes?
If they were playing north-south, were playing inverted minors and went 3 diamonds, would you
Same thing applies.
Would you go 3 spades?
A bit more scared now. Probably would think about the vulnerability now.
Yeah.
Would think about the vulnerability. As ever, with these kind of, what I want to call a cheeky bids, you've got to consider vulnerability. As ever, with these marginal, am I going to go for it, am I not bids, that's where vulnerability does come into its own. Probably not over 3 diamonds, to be fair, which is why inverted minors are good. Now, what will happen, as I say, as I'm repeating myself really, but what will happen is these guys will be upset that you've tried to pinch it in spades, and then they will be 3 diamonds, and then you'll give in, and they'll probably make 3 diamonds, or they won't. But it can't be bad making them make more tricks. That can't be a bad thing. The upshot is they both wimp out, which now that I've said that, none of you will, because you feel like you don't want to be a wimp, but you know what I mean. They decide to let you play in 2 spades, and that would probably be a good thing, because spades being trumps is very likely to benefit your side. Again, it's not guaranteed. Your partner might have 1 spade and loads of clubs, and they're going, well, I couldn't bid 3 clubs, so I didn't bid. And you're going, oh, I wish we were in clubs now. So it's not flawless. I'm not talking about perfection. I'm talking about general statistics. It will work most of the time. Okay, any other scenarios I want to talk about? Oh yes, over preemptive bids. So a preemptive bid is a different scenario, but the ideology is similar, in that when they open a preemptive bid, let's say they start with, 2 spades. The ideology is similar, but the points sort of shift about a bit, because the preemptor doesn't have a good hand. The preemptive hand will usually be weak, because that's what they're saying. So the responder could be stronger here. So if we just think about this bit, before I give you a hand for West, if we think about this as a bidding scenario, North has opened 2 spades, which is weak. They have 6 spades and a weak hand. East has passed. Don't really know much about their hand because they're in the direct seat. So it's quite likely they have, well, not quite likely, but it's possible they have a decent hand, but couldn't bid because double didn't work and they couldn't bid their suit at the 3 level, blah, blah, blah. This hand has passed. Now, what we know about South is that their hand isn't necessarily bad because they might just not like the spades. If you remember, when you're responding to a preemptive bid like this, you want to bid more with trumps. You don't really want to bid more if you don't have a fit. So we know this hand isn't excellent, because if it was excellent, it would have done something. It would have bid 2 trumps or 3 of their suit or whatever. So we know it's not exquisite, but we don't know it's actually not that bad. It could be 13, 14 points, but just with no particular liking for spades, not going anywhere. You see? So, in this scenario, protecting, you've got to be a little bit warier, because a little bit more wary, I suppose is the way to say it, because this pass here might not actually be that bad. That hand might not be that bad. So I would say you can protect, but really, you don't want to be stretching too much. Again, you want to consider vulnerability. Vulnerability with these kind of marginal decisions is as ever important. So yes, I would make a takeout double with this hand, when really, strictly speaking, you are a few points light, because we're in the protective seat, I think it's worth it. But consider vulnerability, and also, because they've made a preemptive bid, the likelihood is that you're going to have to bid higher, obviously, because they've bid 2 spades or 3 spades or whatever. So for us to bid, we're making our partner, for us to double, I suppose I should say, we're making our partner have to bid 3 somethings. So we just want to be a little bit cautious there. Much more attractive to get in at the 1 level when they only have to bid 2 bananas. 2 or 3 level, or even 3 or 4 level, you've got to be a little bit more cautious in the protective seat. As ever with these kind of marginal, pushy bids, consider vulnerability when you're on the cusp. Okay? That's generally it though. Suit, pass, do something. That something is almost always double. If it's not double, if it's a suit, and if it's not one of them, it's probably no trumps. The only time I would suggest passing is if you actively want to defend. So they bid 2 spades. Well, if I just change it here to say 2 hearts, we kind of have to pass, don't we, really? Let's be honest. There's no real bid that makes sense now. If we double, partner's likely to bid spades, which is bad. If we bid no trumps, we need more points, and also we're not balanced. If we were to bid 3 of our suits, We need 5 cards at least, ideally 6 at the 3 level. So there's no real bid here. So over the 2-heart bid, I would say shrug shoulders and pass. So just because it goes suit, pass, pass doesn't mean you must bid. It's just suggested it's usually a good bid unless you want to defend. In this scenario, I don't mind defending.